Okay, so what if I told you that one of the absolute biggest trends in crypto today might also be, well, one of the most misunderstood? Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into the deep end, shall we? I mean, every single week we're seeing these massive headlines about new RWA, that's real-world asset projects, and they're claiming they're tokenizing literally billions of dollars in traditional assets. Sounds revolutionary, right? But before we all just blindly buy into the hype, we really need to take a closer look at what's actually happening on the ground.
Because look, here's the stark reality as we look toward 2026. There is a massive, and I mean fundamental, difference between projects that are tokenizing actual real value and projects that are simply, well, tokenizing PowerPoint slides. And let me tell you, some of those are very expensive PowerPoints. You see, a lot of what's floating around out there right now just isn't fully baked. Some are just pilot programs, some are only just starting to build the underlying infrastructure, and others, honestly, they just have future plans. Now, the tokenization concept isn't fake, but not everyone claiming to do it is actually delivering the goods. And that brings us to the big, investigative question that almost nobody seems to be asking when these projects claim to hold billions in real-world assets. How many of those assets actually exist? By the end of this explainer, you're going to know exactly how to tell the difference between the true visionaries and, well, the vaporware.
So, let's get into it. Part 1. The RWA boom. To really understand this boom, we have to look at the sheer scope of the foundation that's being laid right now. We're talking about migrating things like US treasuries, real estate, private credit, carbon credits, and even physical gold straight onto the blockchain. It's a massive, massive undertaking. Essentially, it's taking the entire traditional financial world and building its digital on-chain twin. And make no mistake, massive financial institutions aren't rushing into this just for the novelty of it. They're driven entirely by the bottom line. Tokenization promises to totally kill those days-long settlement waiting periods. It unlocks liquidity for highly illiquid assets, it makes fractional ownership possible, and absolutely crucially, it drastically slashes operational costs. But here's a pretty hard truth that often gets lost in all that excitement. Not every token actually equals ownership. I mean, just because a digital token exists and it has a really fancy name, that does not mean it holds any actual legal weight over a physical asset out there in the real world.
Which leads us to part 2, how real tokenization works. Let's actually look at the plumbing of a genuinely tokenized asset. It builds step by step. First, obviously, it starts with the real asset itself. Then you absolutely need an SPV or some kind of legal framework to establish legal ownership. Step 3, that requires a fully licensed custodian to lock that asset down securely. Step 4 is rigorous compliance. And only after all of that, literally at step 5, is a blockchain token minted and finally transferred to the investor. The token is actually at the very end of the line.
The crucial takeaway here is this. That final blockchain token, it's entirely worthless without the robust legal framework supporting it. Without real legal backing and a custodian, you are literally just holding a digital receipt for nothing. It's just another crypto token. All right, moving on to part 3, spotting the hype. There is a brilliant contrast between actual execution and empty promises. Real tokenization is actually kind of boring. It's made up of tedious audits, strict custody rules, and heavy compliance dashboards. Hype, on the other hand, is flashy. It's beautiful pitch decks, it's slick graphics, and these wild roadmaps. Listen, if a project is all flash and no compliance, your radar should absolutely be going off. Because when you really dig into these projects boasting about billions in tokenized assets, the red flags become glaringly obvious. No licensed custodian, no clear legal ownership, no audited reserves. Sometimes it's honestly mind-boggling. You'll find projects claiming to tokenize prime real estate that haven't even launched beyond a simple testnet. Without regulatory clarity, those billions are just an illusion. Having a white paper is not tokenization. Having a roadmap is definitely not adoption. And most importantly, having a token isn't proof. Literally anyone can mint a token in 5 minutes, right? But attaching it to a real-world legal structure, that takes years of incredibly hard work. Let's look at part 4. Who is actually leading? The real opportunity in this space belongs to the projects that are combining some very specific, non-negotiable traits. The actual leaders out there in tokenized treasuries and private credit, they embrace regulation instead of trying to hide from it. They prioritize total transparency. They utilize ironclad custody setups. They undergo regular audits. And they actually build real institutional partnerships with legacy banks.
The biggest takeaway here is that the winners aren't simply, issuing a token to retail investors and just hoping for the best. No, the winners are building the underlying settlement infrastructure. They're doing the really heavy lifting of connecting legacy finance directly with blockchain technology.
Which brings us to Part 5, Trust Creates Adoption. Because at the end of the day, technology just isn't enough on its own. Institutions only adopt systems they completely trust, so the strongest RWA companies are building their credibility right alongside their tech. We're talking about reputation, founder credibility, strong search visibility, genuine thought leadership, and a really consistent media presence. In a market that's honestly full of vaporware, transparency and established authority are heavily rewarded.
It all boils down to this fantastic quote. Trust doesn't come from tokenization. Trust comes from consistent proof. Think about that. You don't magically become trustworthy just because you slapped an asset on a blockchain. You become trustworthy by constantly proving your audits, proving your custody, and proving your legal standing to the broader market.
And finally, Part 6, Conclusion and the Path Forward.
The companies that are genuinely shaping the tokenized economy are earning trust long before they ever earn their launch day headlines. And for Web3 builders looking to establish this kind of authority, utilizing platforms like Web3 Newswire can be a really crucial strategy. It just goes to show how strategic PR helps companies build that authority and stay highly visible as this entire market continues to mature.
So, I want to leave you with this question. What challenge do you think still needs to be solved in the RWA space? Drop a comment below with the letters RWA if you believe tokenization is the financial transformation of the decade. Or tell us what you think the biggest hurdles still are. Make sure to hit subscribe for more weekly deep dives into institutional adoption. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I will see you in the next explainer.
Subscribe and visit Web3 Newswire for visibility and credibility of your Web3 projects.